This is HOA Justice Stories. Let me set the scene fast. I am standing in my driveway in Buffalo, New York, at 7:30 in the morning, and Janice Hall is screaming at me about dirt. Not a truckload. Not a pile. A scatter of loose soil from the post holes my contractor dug yesterday for the new fence, maybe 2 shovelfuls total, sitting on the grass strip between my driveway and the curb. She is waving a laminated policy sheet like a shield, her face red, her crossbody bag stuffed with paper packets bouncing against her hip as she gestures. "Keep talking, I love adding notes," she says, pulling out a pen and flipping open a small notebook. "I have done this before and people fold every time." I moved to Foxglove Falls Commons 6 months ago because the rent was reasonable and the commute to my restaurant manager job was under 20 minutes. I work long evening shifts, sometimes closing past midnight, and I am supporting family back home. Every dollar counts. The neighborhood is one of those master-planned communities where fences are treated like sacred law. Every panel height, every post spacing, every paint color goes through the Foxglove Falls Commons Association board for approval. I knew that going in. I filed the fence application 2 months ago. Got written approval, hired a licensed contractor, and started work yesterday. Now Janice, the self-appointed compliance officer, is telling me the dirt constitutes debris under Section 4.7 of the covenants, and she is fining me $200 on the spot. I need to leave for work in 40 minutes. My shift starts at 9 and the kitchen prep cannot wait. She is blocking my driver's side door, standing between me and my car, her key ring jangling loudly every time she shifts her weight. A neighbor across the street is watering the lawn, pausing mid-spray to stare. I take a breath and keep my voice level. "Janice, the contractor will clean that up this afternoon when he pours the concrete for the posts. It is part of the job." She shakes her head, waves the laminated sheet again. Debris is debris. The policy does not have a grace period. You should have tarped the area or swept it immediately. I am documenting this and submitting the fine today. I nod like I accept it, because I want her comfortable and careless. She writes something in the notebook, snaps it shut, and finally steps aside. "I will be watching this project closely," she says. "One more violation and we escalate to a stop work order." Then she turns and walks toward the community entrance sign, her bucket hat bobbing. I get in my car and leave for work. My mind is racing the whole drive. The fence application was approved. I have the email and the signed form. The contractor, a guy named Miguel, has done a dozen fences in this neighborhood. He knows the rules, but Janice has a reputation. I heard stories from other residents during move-in. She targets people over tiny things, racks up fines, and pressures them into paying just to make it stop. The HOA board backs her because she volunteers for all the compliance work, and they do not want to deal with it themselves. When I get to the restaurant, I pull up the covenants on my phone during my break. Section 4.7 does mention debris, but it defines debris as construction waste, discarded materials, or abandoned equipment. Loose dirt from active work does not fit. I text Miguel and ask him to take photos of the site today, including timestamps, and to document every step of the cleanup. He replies immediately, "Already on it." I have dealt with her before. She tried to red tag my truck last year. That makes me feel a little better. But when I clock out that night and check my email, there is a formal notice from the HOA. Violation logged. Fine assessed. Payment due within 14 days or additional penalties apply. $200 I cannot afford to waste. The next morning I wake up to find a handwritten note taped to my front door. It is on Foxglove Falls Commons letterhead, signed by Janice. Compliance inspection scheduled for tomorrow, 9 a.m. All work must be halted pending review of easement boundaries. Failure to comply will result in immediate stop work order and additional fines. I call Miguel. He is on another job, but he keeps his voice calm. She cannot issue a stop work without board approval. That is in the bylaws. And there is no easement issue. Your property line is clear. We pulled the survey when we filed the application. I ask him if he can be there tomorrow at 9. He says yes. I also call my friend Derek, a local paralegal, who helped me review the lease when I moved in. He has lived in Buffalo his whole life and he knows HOA games. I explain the situation. He listens, then says, "Start a folder. Print every email, every approval, every receipt. Take photos of the worksite daily. If she tries to escalate, we hit her with a demand letter and force a written response." Most of these people fold when they realize you have documentation. That night I print everything: the fence application, the approval email, the signed permit from the city, the contractor invoice, the covenant section definitions. I put it all in a binder with tabs. I also set up my phone to record audio during tomorrow's inspection. New York is a one-party consent state. I do not need her permission. The next morning, Janice arrives at 8:55. She is wearing the same red light jacket and black bucket hat, carrying a clipboard and a tape measure in a canvas bag. Miguel pulls up a minute later in his truck. The neighbor watering the lawn yesterday is back again. Same hose, same pause mid-spray to stare. Janice does not greet us. She walks directly to the fence line, drops her bag, and pulls out the tape measure with a loud snap. She measures the distance from the curb to the first post hole. Then she measures again. Then she pulls out a tiny line level and sets it on the string line Miguel ran between the stakes. She writes something on the clipboard. Miguel stands next to me, arms crossed, saying nothing. I have my phone in my jacket pocket recording. Janice straightens up and turns to face us. This fence is encroaching on the easement. The setback requirement is 6 feet from the curb. You are at 5 feet 8 inches. That is a violation. She taps the clipboard. Also, your post spacing does not match the approved plan. The application specified 8-foot spacing. You have 7 feet 11 inches here. Miguel shakes his head. The approved plan allows for field adjustment within 3 inches. That is standard. And the setback measurement starts from the property line, not the curb. The property line is marked on the survey. We are fully compliant. Janice smiles. Not according to the recorded plat. The easement extends 6 feet from the curb edge. I checked with the county this morning. I feel my stomach drop, but I keep my face neutral. I pull out my phone, open the photos Miguel sent me yesterday, and show her the survey map with the property line clearly marked. The survey was done last year when I moved in. It is on file with the city. There is no easement conflict. She barely glances at it. Surveys can be wrong. The plat is the legal document. If you continue this work, I will issue a stop work order today and refer this to the HOA attorney for enforcement. You will be liable for removal costs and restoration. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA chaos. Miguel stays calm, but his jaw is tight. I can stop work and wait for you to provide the plat documentation. But I need that in writing. If you are claiming an easement issue, show me the recorded plat. Otherwise, we continue per the approved permit. Janice does not answer. She turns and walks back to her car, clipboard tucked under her arm, tape measure swinging. She drives off without another word. Miguel looks at me. She is bluffing. There is no easement. If there were, it would have been flagged during the city permit review. I nod, but I am not sure. Janice has been doing this job for years. She knows the rules better than I do. And if she escalates to the attorney, I am looking at legal fees I cannot afford. I text Derek and give him the update. He replies within minutes. Demand the plat in writing. Copy the board president and the management company. If she cannot produce it within 72 hours, file a formal complaint for harassment. That forces a response and creates a paper trail. I draft the email that night. I keep it short and factual. I attach the survey, the city permit, and the fence approval. I CC the board president, the management company, and Janice. I request a copy of the recorded plat showing the alleged easement conflict within 72 hours. I hit send and wait. 2 days pass. No response. On the third day, I get an email from the management company. They are investigating the complaint and will respond within 10 business days. Janice sends a separate email, directly to me, with no CC. It is one sentence. Keep talking. I love adding notes. That is when I realize she is not going to back down. She is escalating. The following Monday, I receive a certified letter. Inside is a complaint log entry, written in what is obviously Janice's voice, claiming I have been verbally abusive during inspections, refused to comply with lawful directives, and created a hostile environment for HOA volunteers. It recommends a formal hearing and a suspension of all improvement privileges pending resolution. I read it twice. None of it is true. I have been calm and polite in every interaction. I have recordings to prove it. I forward the letter to Derek. He calls me 10 minutes later. This is retaliation. She knows you are not going to pay the fine, so she is trying to bury you in process. If she can get you suspended, the board can force you to remove the fence and ban future applications. It is a power move. I ask him what I should do. He says, request a hearing. Bring your evidence. Bring Miguel as a witness. Bring the neighbor who saw the inspections. And bring the recordings. If she lied in the complaint log, the recordings will prove it. That flips the whole thing. I email the board president that night and request a formal hearing under the bylaws. I attach a rebuttal to the complaint log point by point with timestamps and evidence references. I state that I have audio recordings of all interactions and I am prepared to present them. The board schedules the hearing for 2 weeks out. During those 2 weeks, Janice does not let up. She starts targeting Miguel directly. She leaves parking warnings on his truck every time he parks in the guest spaces near my unit. She takes photos of his equipment staged on the grass and files noise complaints claiming he is running power tools before 7 a.m., which is not true. Miguel shows me the timestamps on his work logs. He arrives at 8 every day. One morning she tries to provoke him into walking off the job. She shows up while he is mixing concrete for the post footings and tells him his contractor license is expired. Miguel pulls out his phone, shows her the active license on the state website, and asks her to leave. She stands there for another 5 minutes, writing in her notebook, then finally walks away. Miguel is calm, but I can see the frustration in his face. He tells me later, she is trying to make this so miserable that you quit. Do not give her that. I do not plan to. The weekend before the hearing, I meet with Derek and we organize the evidence packet. We have the survey, the city permit, the fence approval, the covenant definitions, the photos Miguel took daily, and the audio recordings from the inspections. We also have a written statement from the neighbor who witnessed the confrontations. The neighbor, a retired teacher named Paul, took same-day photos in identical lighting showing Janice blocking my driveway and gesturing aggressively. He includes timestamps and his contact information. Derek helps me draft a demand letter to accompany the packet. It requests an immediate reversal of the fine, a written apology for the false complaint log, and a formal review of Janice's conduct as compliance officer. We do not threaten legal action yet, but the tone makes it clear we are prepared to escalate if necessary. The night before the hearing, I cannot sleep. I keep replaying the confrontations in my head. I keep hearing Janice say, I have done this before and people fold every time. I think about the stakes. The fine is bad enough, but if the board sides with her, I lose the fence, I lose future improvement rights, and I probably get hit with removal costs and legal fees. I cannot afford any of it. I am already stretching to cover rent and sending money home. A surprise tow bill or a lien could break me. But I have the recordings. I have the proof. And I have Derek and Miguel backing me up. The hearing is scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. I arrive 15 minutes early. The room is small, with a folding table at the front for the board members and rows of plastic chairs for residents. Janice is already there, sitting in the front row, her crossbody bag on the chair next to her. She does not look at me. Miguel and Paul arrive a few minutes later. Derek is running late, but he texts to say he is 5 minutes out. The board president, a man in his 60s named Ron, calls the meeting to order at 7 sharp. He reads the complaint log entry aloud, then asks if I want to respond. I stand up, walk to the front, and hand him the evidence packet. I explain, calmly and methodically, that every claim in the complaint log is false. I provide the recordings, the photos, the neighbor's statement, and the contractor logs. I walk through the timeline step by step. Ron listens without interrupting. The other board members flip through the packet. One of them, a woman named Linda, stops on the page with the survey map and frowns. She looks at Janice. You said there was an easement conflict. This survey shows the property line is clear. Janice stands up. The survey is not the controlling document. The recorded plat is. I checked with the county, and the easement extends 6 feet from the curb. I wait for her to finish, then I pull out my phone. I play the recording from the inspection where she claimed the same thing. Then I play the part where Miguel asked her to provide the plat in writing, and she refused. Linda looks at Ron. Did we ever get the plat documentation? Ron shakes his head. No, Janice said she was working with the county, but we have not seen anything. I hand Ron a printed copy of the email I sent requesting the plat, with the 72-hour deadline. I point out the date. That was 3 weeks ago. No response. Janice's face goes red. She opens her crossbody bag and pulls out a folded piece of paper. She tries to hand it to Ron, but he waves her off. If you had this, you should have submitted it with your complaint. You cannot introduce new evidence at the hearing without prior notice. That is in the bylaws. Janice sits down hard. Her key ring jangles. Ron looks at the rest of the board. I think we have enough to make a decision. Unless there are objections, I recommend we reverse the fine, remove the complaint log entry, and allow the fence project to continue per the approved permit. Linda nods. I agree, and I think we need to review the compliance officer procedures. This should not have escalated this far. The third board member, a younger guy named Matt, raises his hand. I also want to note that targeting the contractor with parking warnings and noise complaints looks like retaliation. If we are serious about fair enforcement, we need to address that. Ron makes a note. Agreed. We will schedule a separate review of the compliance program. For now, the fence project is approved to continue. The fine is reversed and will be refunded within 14 days. Janice stands up again, her voice shaking. This is a mistake. He has been non-compliant from day one. I have documentation. Keep talking. I love adding notes. Ron cuts her off. Janice, we have reviewed the documentation. The recordings show you made claims you could not support. The neighbor's statement contradicts your version of events, and the refusal to provide the plat is a serious procedural failure. We are moving forward with the decision. Janice grabs her bag and walks out. The door slams behind her. I sit down, and for the first time in weeks, I feel like I can breathe. But it is not over. 2 days later, I receive a notice in the mail. It is a small claims filing. Janice Hall versus me personally, claiming defamation and requesting damages for emotional distress and reputational harm. The amount is under $5,000, just enough to stay in small claims court and force me into a hearing without needing a lawyer. I text Derek immediately. He calls me back within the hour. This is frivolous. She is trying to force you into court and waste your time. But we can use this. If she is claiming defamation, she has to prove you made false statements. You did not. Everything you said at the hearing was backed by evidence. We file a motion to dismiss, and we counterclaim for harassment and filing a baseless suit. That puts her on defense. I ask him how much it will cost. He says he will handle the motion pro bono as a favor. But if it goes to trial, I will need a lawyer. I tell him I will figure it out. That weekend I go to the site to check on the fence. Miguel has finished the posts and he is starting on the panels. The work looks clean and professional. Paul, the neighbor, walks over and asks how the hearing went. I fill him in. He shakes his head. She has been doing this for years. I am glad someone finally stood up to her. I thank him for the statement and the photos. He waves it off. It was the right thing to do. As we are talking, a car pulls up. It is not Janice. It is a man in a suit, carrying a briefcase. He introduces himself as the HOA attorney, hired by the board to review the compliance program. He asks if he can take a look at the fence and ask a few questions. I say yes. He walks the line, checks the posts, measures the setback with his own tape. Then he pulls out a folded document. It is the recorded plat. He shows me the easement notation. It is marked as a utility easement, 6 feet wide, running parallel to the curb. But the notation specifies underground utilities only. Surface structures, including fences, are allowed as long as they do not interfere with access. He taps the document. Your fence is fully compliant. There is no encroachment. Janice misread the plat or she did not bother to check the full description. Either way, the board is concerned about liability. If we had forced you to remove a compliant fence based on incorrect information, you could have sued. We are lucky you documented everything. I ask him what happens next. He says the board is scheduling a special meeting to review Janice's role and the compliance procedures. He cannot say more, but he makes it clear the board is not happy. A week later, Derek files the motion to dismiss the small claims case. He attaches the hearing transcript, the recordings, and the attorney's confirmation that the fence is compliant. He argues that Janice's filing is retaliatory and baseless, and he requests sanctions for filing a frivolous suit. The judge schedules a hearing for the following month. In the meantime, the HOA holds the special meeting. I am not invited, but Paul attends and he texts me updates in real time. The board reviews the compliance program, the complaint log process, and Janice's conduct. Multiple residents come forward with similar stories. Parking warnings for guests. Noise complaints with no evidence. Fines for minor issues that other residents were never cited for. One resident shows a spreadsheet they obtained through a records request. It is a target list. My address is highlighted. The board votes to remove Janice from the compliance officer role, effective immediately. They also vote to issue a written warning for harassment behavior. The warning goes in her file and any future violations will result in a fine or suspension of HOA privileges. Paul texts me the outcome. I sit in my car in the restaurant parking lot and read the message 3 times. It feels surreal. 2 weeks later, the small claims hearing happens. I show up with Derek and the full evidence packet. Janice shows up alone. The judge reviews the motion to dismiss and asks Janice to present her evidence of defamation. She tries to argue that I damaged her reputation by presenting the recordings at the board hearing. The judge cuts her off. The recordings were admitted as evidence in a formal proceeding. They were relevant and truthful. That is not defamation. Case dismissed. He also orders her to pay my filing fees. Janice walks out without a word. A week after that, I receive a check from the HOA. It is the refund of the $200 fine. Attached is a letter from the board president apologizing for the handling of the complaint and confirming that the fence project is fully approved and compliant. The refund hits the ledger like a slap. Miguel finishes the fence the following week. It looks great. The posts are level, the panels are straight, and the setback is exactly where it should be. Paul comes over to admire the work, and he brings me a six-pack as a thank you for standing up to Janice. We sit on my front steps, and he tells me stories about other residents who tried to fight her and gave up. He says, "You did what a lot of people wanted to do but could not afford to risk." I tell him I could not afford not to risk it. A month later, the board schedules another special meeting. This time it is a recall vote. 3 board members, including Ron, are up for re-election. A group of residents, organized through the neighborhood group chat, runs a slate of candidates focused on transparency and fair enforcement. Janice does not run. She does not even attend the meeting. The new slate wins. Resignations cascade. By the end of the meeting, the entire board has turned over. The new president is a retired engineer named Carol, who promises to overhaul the compliance process, publish clear guidelines, and require written documentation for all violations before fines are issued. Paul texts me after the meeting. New leadership takes over before the next project gets targeted. I feel like I can finally relax. But a week later, I get one more surprise. I receive an email from the new board president. She thanks me for bringing the compliance issues to light, and she asks if I would be willing to serve on a new oversight committee to review HOA policies. I think about it for a day. Then I reply. I say yes, but only if the meetings are scheduled around my work shifts. She agrees. The first committee meeting is scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, I focus on work and settling into the house. The fence is done. The fine is refunded. Janice is off the board and out of the compliance roll. The small claims case is dismissed. It feels like a win, but I know it almost went the other way. If I had not recorded the inspections, if I had not kept the documentation, if I had not had Derek and Miguel and Paul backing me up, I would have lost. I would have paid the fine, removed the fence, and probably moved out. One evening I am sitting on my back patio looking at the fence, and I think about the moment at the first inspection when Janice said, "I have done this before and people fold every time." I think about how close I came to folding. And I think about the recording I made that day, the one I did not play at the hearing because I did not need it yet. The one where she admitted, off the record, that the easement claim was not about the plat. It was about control. She said, "People need to learn that the rules matter, and I am the one who enforces them. If I let you slide, everyone will think they can do whatever they want." I saved that recording. I did not need it at the hearing because the other evidence was enough, but I kept it, just in case. A few weeks later, I get a text from Paul. He says Janice is moving out. She listed her house for sale and she is leaving the neighborhood. He does not know where she is going, but he heard through the group chat that she is facing a separate lawsuit from another resident over a towing incident that happened last year. Apparently, she called a tow truck on a guest vehicle without proper notice, and the guest is suing for damages and harassment. I do not feel bad for her, but I do not feel triumphant either. I just feel tired. The fence is done. The fight is over. and I can finally focus on the things that matter. A month after the recall vote, the new board holds a town hall to introduce the updated compliance policies. I attend with Miguel and Paul. Carol, the new president, presents a streamlined process. All violations must be documented with photos and timestamps. All fines must be approved by a majority vote of the board, not a single officer. Residents have the right to request a hearing before any fine is assessed, and all compliance officers must complete training on the bylaws and fair enforcement practices. The room applauds. It feels like a reset. After the meeting, Carol pulls me aside. She thanks me again for pushing back and creating the paper trail that forced the board to act. She says, "A lot of people were frustrated with Janice, but no one had the documentation to prove a pattern. You gave us the leverage we needed to make changes." I tell her I just wanted to build a fence. She laughs. "Well, you built a fence and you rebuilt the HOA. Not bad." I drive home that night and I think about how the whole thing started. A pile of dirt, a $200 fine, a compliance officer who thought she could bully me into compliance because she had done this before, and people fold every time. But I did not fold. And when she pushed, I pushed back with evidence, process, and patience. The next week I receive a final letter from the HOA attorney. He confirms that the recorded plat disproves the easement claim. He notes that Janice's interpretation was incorrect and that the board has implemented new procedures to prevent similar issues in the future. He closes by saying, "This matter is resolved. No further action is required." I file the letter with the rest of the documentation, and I close the binder. A few days later, Derek texts me. The sanctions hearing for the small claims dismissal is scheduled. The judge ordered Janice to pay my filing fees, but Derek filed an additional motion requesting sanctions for filing a frivolous retaliatory suit. He says the judge is likely to grant it, which means Janice will owe additional penalties on top of the fees. I tell him to proceed. If she wants to waste the court's time, she can pay for it. The sanctions hearing happens the following week. I do not attend. Derek handles it. He texts me the outcome. The judge granted the sanctions. Janice owes me $300 in fees and penalties, plus court costs. Total, $475. I receive the check 2 weeks later. I deposit it and I use part of it to pay Miguel a bonus for dealing with the harassment. He tries to refuse, but I insist. "You earned it," I tell him. He grins. "Next time someone in this neighborhood needs a fence, send them my way. I will make sure they know what they are getting into." Summer arrives and the neighborhood settles into a new rhythm. The new board publishes monthly updates in the group chat. Compliance issues are down. Resident complaints are down. The parking warnings and noise complaints that used to flood the inbox have stopped. Carol implements a voluntary mediation program for disputes, and most issues get resolved without fines or hearings. Paul tells me he has never seen the neighborhood this calm. He says, "You broke the cycle. Janice ran this place like her personal fiefdom for years, and no one could stop her because she had the board in her pocket. You forced accountability. That changed everything." I do not know if I changed everything, but I know I changed my situation, and maybe that is enough. One evening I am closing at the restaurant and I get a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I check the message later, it is from a reporter at a local news station. She says she heard about the HOA conflict, and she wants to do a story on abusive HOA enforcement and resident rights. She asks if I would be willing to be interviewed. I think about it for a day, then I call her back. I say yes, but only if she focuses on the process and the policy changes, not the personal conflict. She agrees. The interview airs 2 weeks later. It is a 3-minute segment during the evening news. The reporter summarizes the dispute, shows photos of the fence, and interviews Carol about the new compliance policies. She also interviews a law professor who explains resident rights under New York HOA law. The segment ends with a reminder that homeowners should document everything and know their rights. I watch it at home with Paul. He raises his glass. "You are famous now." I laugh. I just wanted to build a fence. But the segment gets traction. The local paper picks it up and runs a follow-up article. Other residents in other HOAs reach out with similar stories. A state legislator contacts Carol and asks if the board would be willing to testify at a hearing on HOA reform. Carol says yes. I do not testify. I have said enough. But I watch the hearing online. Carol presents the changes the board made, and she argues for statewide standards on compliance procedures, fines, and hearings. The committee seems interested. A few months later, a bill is introduced. It does not pass that session, but it gets renewed the following year. A year after the fence project, I am still living in Foxglove Falls Commons. The fence is holding up great. The new board is functioning. The compliance process is fair and transparent. And Janice is gone. I run into Ron, the old board president, at the grocery store one day. He apologizes again for not stepping in sooner. He says he did not realize how bad it had gotten until the hearing. I tell him I appreciate the apology, but the important thing is that it got fixed. He nods. "You did us a favor. We were heading for a lawsuit. If you had not documented everything and forced the issue, we would have been liable for a lot more than a $200 fine." I thank him, and we part ways. That night I get a text from Derek. He says he is working on another HOA case, this one involving a roof color dispute. He asks if I would be willing to talk to the client and share my experience. I say yes. We set up a call for the following week. The client is a young woman who just bought her first house. The HOA is threatening to fine her for installing a roof that is one shade darker than the approved color chart. She is terrified of escalating, and she is ready to pay to make it go away. I tell her my story. I tell her about the documentation, the recordings, the demand letter, and the hearing. I tell her that standing up to the HOA is scary and expensive and exhausting, but it is possible if you have the evidence and the process on your side. She listens, then she says, "Did you ever regret fighting back?" I think about it for a moment. Then I say no, because if I had folded, Janice would still be targeting people. The board would still be rubber stamping her decisions, and the next person would have gone through the same thing. Fighting back was not just about the fence. It was about setting a boundary and forcing accountability. She thanks me and hangs up. A few weeks later, Derek texts me. The roof case settled. The HOA reversed the fine and approved the roof color retroactively. The client is staying in her house. I smile. One more person who did not fold. 2 years after the fence project, I get an email from Carol. She says the board is planning a neighborhood appreciation event, and they want to recognize residents who contributed to the community. She asks if I would be willing to accept a small plaque for standing up for resident rights. I decline. I do not need a plaque, but I thank her for the offer. The event happens anyway. Paul attends, and he takes a photo of the new compliance officer, a retired accountant named Susan, presenting updated guidelines to the crowd. The guidelines include a resident bill of rights, a clear appeals process, and a cap on fines for first-time violations. Paul texts me the photo. "This is because of you," he writes. I do not know if that is true, but I know the neighborhood is better now than it was 2 years ago, and I know I played a part in that. The fence is still standing, the fine is still refunded, and Janice is still gone. I think about the moment at the curbside by the community entrance sign when the surveyors set up the tripod and Janice tried to bump it. I think about the surveyor shutting her down, calmly and firmly, and telling her that interfering with a licensed survey is a misdemeanor. I think about the look on her face when she realized she had pushed too far. That was the beginning of the end for her. Not because of the confrontation, but because it was one more piece of evidence that she did not respect boundaries, procedures, or the law. And when the board finally reviewed her conduct, that pattern was impossible to ignore. I finish my shift at the restaurant and I drive home. The fence is lit by the streetlights, clean and straight and exactly where it should be. I park in the driveway and I sit for a moment looking at it. It is just a fence, but it is also proof that I did not fold. A few months later, I attend my first oversight committee meeting as a member. We review new applications, discuss policy updates, and hear from residents with concerns. The process is transparent, collaborative, and fair. It is everything the old system was not. At the end of the meeting, Carol asks if there is any other business. I raise my hand. I suggest that the board publish an annual report summarizing compliance actions, fines, and appeals. I argue that transparency will prevent future abuses and build trust. The committee agrees. The board votes to implement it starting next quarter. I leave the meeting feeling like I contributed something useful. That night I text Derek and thank him for everything. He replies, "You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork." I also text Miguel and thank him for sticking with the project. He replies, "Best fence I ever built. Not because of the work, but because of the fight." And I text Paul and thank him for the witness statement and the photos. He replies, "Anytime. That is what neighbors do." I sit on my back patio and I look at the fence one more time. It is solid, level, and compliant. It is exactly what I wanted when I started this project 2 years ago. And it cost me a lot more than I expected. Not in money, but in time, stress, and energy. But it was worth it. Because I did not just build a fence. I rebuilt my sense of control. I proved to myself that I could stand up to someone who thought she had all the power. And I helped change a system that was broken. The fight is over. The fence is done. And I can finally rest. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.